April 1945, Bavaria. Inside a U.S. evacuation hospital, canvas walls snap in a cold wind, while an overhead lamp throws a hard circle of light on a blood-slick field table. A young anesthetist steadies an ether mask. A scrub nurse times a clear bottle marked penicillin, U.S. Army Medical Department. Along the wall, under guard, stand captured German surgeons in torn feldgrau. They came expecting interrogation. Instead, an American major invites them closer. Watch the sequence. Debridement, irrigation, vascular control, antibiotics. Steel glints. Hemostats bite and a suction tip hums. The femoral bleed slackens. 6-hour rule, the major says. Irrigate, excise, repair. Amputate only if you must. The prisoners exchange glances. Their service still treats many such wounds with guillotine amputation and carbolic, starved of modern supplies after years of war. One whispers, almost protesting, "Without infection, this is not possible." The nurse taps the bottle and notes the dose schedule, American. Records from the European theatre show this choreography had become policy by late 1944. Standardized consultant oversight, portable sterilizers, forward surgery, and routine penicillin at the table. The shift cut sepsis and salvaged limbs at a rate the enemy had not anticipated. As the patient's pulse steadies and the drape is folded, the major turns to the visitors. "You'd do the same for us," he says, not quite a question. A German chief physician swallows. "We were told you lacked science," he murmurs. The anesthetist smiles behind her mask. "We brought factories." According to official medical histories, American commanders paired industrial production with doctrine, consultant systems, training manuals, and flexible evacuation chains to make scenes like this repeatable across the front. The Germans came prepared to refute propaganda with pride. Documentation would record something harder to process: astonishment and then respect. Military logs later noted prisoner surgeons requesting pamphlets and demonstrations immediately. Before their capture, the German Army Medical Service regarded itself as the most scientifically disciplined in Europe. Since 1939, the Heeresanitätsinspection, the Army Medical Inspectorate, had codified every surgical protocol down to the gram of ether. Field hospitals followed Sanitätsdienstvorschrift 38, a manual that defined success through speed and hierarchy. On paper, the system seemed invincible. 1 to 200 field hospitals, 15,000 doctors, and 400,000 orderlies, according to wartime administrative tables. Surgical outcomes during the early Blitzkrieg campaigns impressed even Allied observers. After-action reports from Poland and France recorded amputations completed in 20 minutes and evacuation chains cleared within 4 hours. That efficiency bred pride. In captured correspondence from the 6th Panzer Army, Colonel Dr. Kurt Waldmann boasted in January 1944, "We have turned surgery into a weapon of maneuver. Our men return faster than the enemy can imagine." German propagandists reinforced the myth. Newsreels such as Sanität im Einsatz showed spotless operating tents, immaculate white coats, and nurses smiling under Red Cross flags. The impression spread through every echelon that German medicine was the equal of its engineering, mechanical, reliable, and self-sufficient. But by 1944, supply collapse had already begun. Allied bombers shredded chemical plants producing sulfur drugs. Shipments of ether and gauze fell by half. Reports preserved in Heeresarzt 1044 mention surgeons forced to reuse scalpels until the nickel flaked. A field diary from Dr. Wilhelm Moser at Aachen records, "We sterilize instruments in petrol tins. No morphine, no plasma, only courage." Yet within their isolated wards, physicians still believed enemy medics primitive, dependent on gadgets and improvisation. American. Intelligence summaries from the Office of Strategic Services note intercepted comments describing U.S. doctors as technicians lacking tradition. This attitude persisted until capture shattered the illusion. When these same German surgeons stood inside American evacuation hospitals in April 1945, they confronted a contradiction. The foe they deemed unscientific wielded instruments they had never seen: portable suction units, flexible catheters, powered autoclaves. According to Surgery in World War II, activities of surgical consultants, the German Medical Corps underestimated the logistical miracle behind those tools. Industrial coordination linking battlefield tents to factories thousands of miles away. Their doctrine prized discipline. The Americans mastered distribution. The German system had produced loyalty. The American one produced results. While the Reich's physicians clung to rigid formulas, American planners, quietly, methodically, were rewriting the entire science of battlefield healing. At the war's midpoint, few believed American battlefield medicine could rival Europe's. In 1942, the U.S. Medical Department still fought shortages of sulfur, ether, and trained surgeons. Early reports from Tunisia revealed chaos: field hospitals overwhelmed, sanitation improvised, mortality from wound sepsis approaching 12%. The Office of the Surgeon General classified its own North African system as inadequate for sustained mobile warfare. Compared to the regimented German Sanitätsdienst, American care looked improvised, held together by bravery rather than doctrine. Yet those failures became the foundation for transformation. By early 1943, the Surgeon General, Major General Norman T. Kirk, ordered an overhaul that joined academia with industry. Harvard's Dr. Elliott Cutler, appointed chief consultant in surgery for the European theater, demanded standardization, uniform instrument kits, mobile sterilization units, and a system of forward surgery operating within hours of injury. Collaboration with companies like Pfizer and Merck yielded the first deep-tank penicillin fermenters, multiplying supply by more than 100-fold between 1943 and 1944. Still, to most Allied observers, the U.S. approach looked reckless. British reports mocked its assembly line medicine. Even within the U.S. ranks, morale suffered. Field medics wrote home about junkyard clinics under fire. Yet behind the canvas and mud, a network was forming. Consultant teams, surgical research units, and medical field laboratories that could turn scientific prototypes into daily procedure. In a single year, American medicine advanced from emergency improvisation to logistical science. Portable suction pumps, collapsible plasma containers, and lightweight autoclaves became standard issue. Training manuals such as TM 8260 drilled every corpsman in aseptic technique and Geneva Convention ethics. All wounded, friend or foe, will receive equal treatment. This combination of technology and principle forged the war's quiet revolution. According to post-war ETO evaluations, the moral strength of the service equaled its technical gain. Behind the image of confusion, newly declassified records reveal an organized miracle in motion, one that would soon stun even Germany's most confident surgeons. Declassified Surgeon General memoranda reveal that by late 1944, American battlefield medicine had become a hidden weapon. The program's cornerstone was the consultant system, a network of elite surgeons, Cutler, Blakemore, DeBakey, assigned to supervise every field hospital from Normandy to the Rhine. Their orders: advance surgery to the wound. This doctrine transformed casualty care into a mobile science. Evacuation hospitals could be operational within 6 hours of arrival. Portable autoclaves, collapsible operating tables, and electric suction units allowed complete aseptic procedures inside tents. The Americans treated logistics as anatomy. Records from the 7th U.S. Army Medical Section describe synchronized supply convoys, surgical trucks leaving depots in Cherbourg every 48 hours, delivering sterile packs and plasma-like munitions. Industrial America had turned sterilization, sutures, and antibiotics into mass production art. Between June 1944 and March 1945, Penicillin shipments from Pfizer's Brooklyn plant rose from 1.2 billion to over 13 billion units per month, enabling every surgery to include infection prophylaxis. The Germans, still rationing sulfur tablets, could not imagine a medical corps backed by entire factories. Colonel Elliott Cutler's reports note that even the humblest forward hospital carried science at divisional strength. TM-8-260 prescribed procedures identical from Normandy beaches to Bavarian villages, ensuring a uniform technique unmatched in any army. The system's secrecy lay not in concealment, but in scale. Enemy intelligence, fixated on tanks and aircraft, ignored medical convoys marked with red crosses. Within those vehicles traveled innovations that would reshape world surgery: vascular repair, plasma transfusion, and continuous suction drainage. General Kirk's directive of January 1945 ordered demonstrations of these methods for Allied and, later, captured Axis physicians, declaring, "Knowledge is strategic strength." At the 130th Evacuation Hospital near Regensburg, Cutler's staff installed a new M2 portable surgical light unit, powered by captured German generators. Witnesses later recalled its glare as brighter than daylight. The Americans planned not only to heal, but to demonstrate superiority by precision. According to Surgery in World War II, these methods reduced wound mortality to 2.1%, the lowest in any theater of war. For the first time, industrial standardization reached the operating table. What seemed improvisation to outsiders was, in truth, a blueprint written in factory code. As those meticulously planned systems reached Germany's heartland, military logs record the moment enemy surgeons saw the machinery of mercy in action and could hardly believe it was real. By late April 1945, the 7th U.S. Army's advance through southern Germany transformed barns, schools and churches into improvised hospitals. Unit diaries of the 130th Evacuation Hospital record that on 25th April near Augsburg, 312 German wounded were admitted within 12 hours. Among them were 10 Wehrmacht surgeons captured with the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hardy, commanding officer, initially ordered their separation, but rescinded the directive after receiving Colonel Cutler's teletyped instruction. Observation fosters surrender of mind as well as arms. The scene that unfolded combined precision with surreal calm. According to official 7th Army medical logs, captured surgeons were brought into an American operating gymnasium, a requisitioned school hall scrubbed with Lysol and lit by a portable M2 surgical lamp. Weather reports confirmed driving rain. Blackout curtains flapped in the wind while generators thumped outside. Inside, nurses from the 16th Evacuation Unit laid out stainless trays, forceps, hemostats, sutures packed in alcohol. An interpreter explained each tool as it appeared. German diaries later recovered from the site record disbelief. They sterilize everything twice. Instruments gleam. They have electric suction and clear bottles marked penicillin. The Americans treated enemy and ally alike, following the Geneva Convention's Article 10 mandates, inscribed even on hospital walls. Prisoners shall receive the same medical attention as the victorious. Communication intercepts show Wehrmacht officers still transmitting delusional optimism. But here the war's hierarchy inverted. A former enemy chief surgeon fetched towels for an American nurse. Hardy's post-action report, dated 27 April 1945, described the atmosphere as tense yet instructive, resentment giving way to curiosity. Outside, the artillery rumbled toward Munich. Inside, the real revolution unfolded beneath sterile drapes. What the Germans witnessed was not triumphal cruelty, but an orderly display of mechanical mercy, driven by a doctrine that equated healing with victory. As twilight fell, Captain Grace Wright recorded in her nursing log, "They watched the suction work as if it were sorcery." Transition. Then, on that rain-swept evening, documented in multiple eyewitness reports, the lesson moved from demonstration to revelation. American hands repairing German flesh under the white glare of captured light. The record in headquarters. 7th U.S. Army Medical Section Log number 234 notes that at 14:30 hours, 26th of April 1945, a demonstration surgery began in the requisitioned Augsburg gymnasium. The patient was a 23-year-old German corporal with a through-and-through thigh wound, hemorrhage from the femoral branch, and beginning shock. German surgeons stood 6 paces back under guard, while Major Elliott Cutler prepared the table. The anesthetist, Lieutenant Grace Wright, positioned a field ether mask and attached the suction line to the new American M2 unit. A nurse adjusted the bottle labeled penicillin, 50,000 units in saline. According to Surgery in World War II, Activities of Surgical Consultants, this was precisely the procedure Cutler had standardized: rapid debridement, irrigation, vascular repair, antibiotic coverage. Under the lamp's white glare, he opened the wound, clamped the bleeder with 2 Halsted hemostats, and irrigated with sterile saline. A German observer whispered, "Wir würden amputieren," we would amputate. Cutler replied without looking up, "That's why we don't." The operation lasted 43 minutes. When the clamp came off, the pulse returned strong, and the limb remained intact. Witness accounts corroborate the atmosphere. Wright's nursing log describes complete silence except for suction. Technician Sergeant Milton Price later recalled in a 1946 interview, "They didn't blink, even when he stitched under magnification. It was disbelief turned to respect." German diary fragments found in POW archives confirm they treat infection before it begins. Magic bottles, lights, women unafraid of blood. Official outcome reports filed 27 April recorded the patient ambulatory within 10 days. No infection observed. The mortality table for April 1945 lists 0 deaths among 62 similar vascular repairs, a statistic unmatched in contemporary German units, where amputation mortality still exceeded 15%. After the surgery, Cutler removed his gloves, invited the visitors forward, and demonstrated the suction mechanism. "Continuous negative pressure," he explained, "prevents pooling, prevents pus." The Germans examined the tubing as if it were alien. One asked permission to sketch the apparatus. It was granted. Photographs taken by the 163rd Signal Corps, catalogued in the Ahmed archives, show their faces lit by the lamp, mouths slightly open. When the lights dimmed and the patient wheeled away, silence lingered. Then Dr. Roth, a former Wehrmacht chief surgeon, said quietly, "We were told you despised science." Cutler answered, "Science isn't what you claim, it's what you share." The official after-action summary concludes, enemy surgeons expressed profound astonishment. Several requested instructional material, demonstration repeated on following day for additional medical prisoners. From that moment, interrogation reports record a distinct shift in attitude. Prisoner medics began volunteering for sanitation details, seeking further instruction. The shock of defeat had become the revelation of advancement. As news of the impossible operation spread through the prisoner wards, disbelief gave way to reflection, documented evidence that compassion, not conquest, could redefine power. In the weeks that followed the Regensburg and Augsburg demonstrations, captured German surgeons began submitting written statements that stunned Allied interrogators. Reports preserved in the Counterintelligence Corps interrogation files may 1945 record phrases like, "We had no conception that such organization or humanity existed in war." One, Dr. Franz Roth, the same observer at Cutler's table, wrote, "American medicine defeats despair. It is the first system we have seen where mercy itself is regulated." Captured field communications from the Wehrmacht's medical inspectorate, recovered near Nuremberg, reveal a striking reversal. The same officers who once boasted of surgical supremacy now requested access to U.S. manuals. Telegram 1045 from the Provisional Hospital Command at Moosburg reads, Request educational materials on penicillin technique observed in captivity. U.S. Army interrogators annotated the note. Tone, admiration. At the Augsburg POW hospital, behavioral shifts became measurable. According to the 7th U.S. Army Civil Affairs Medical Summary, June 1945, prisoner absenteeism from work details dropped by 40%. Guards reported German doctors volunteering for sanitation and triage duties, citing professional curiosity. A former SS medical orderly told interrogators, "They heal us to prove an idea that knowledge cannot be beaten." The shock was not purely technical. It was moral. Nazi indoctrination had long portrayed Allied medicine as brutal and commercial. The reality, precise, compassionate, efficient, eroded that myth faster than any leaflet. U.S. intelligence psychological warfare analysts concluded, demonstrations of ethical medical conduct among enemy personnel produce disproportionate surrender effects. Official casualty ledgers underscore the point. In May 1945, mortality among wounded POWs treated in American evacuation hospitals stood at 2.3%. Comparable German field rates exceeded 18%. The arithmetic of mercy became propaganda's undoing. When Allied forces opened camps like Hammelburg and treated both prisoners and freed inmates side by side, surviving German medics stood speechless. Lieutenant Grace Wright noted in her final ETO diary entry, "They wept not from fear, but from recognition." Military psychologists would later call it the conversion of competence, the moment professional respect dissolved the last fragments of ideology, recorded forever in the surrender reports that followed. The immediate aftermath of the American medical demonstrations rippled through both military administration and post-war planning. The 7th U.S. Army Civil Affairs Medical Report, July 1945, documented that enemy medical personnel now exhibit cooperative behavior without coercion. Morale increase among prisoners directly tied to observed humanitarian conduct. Within weeks, the U.S. Army authorized supervised collaboration between American and German doctors in POW hospitals at Augsburg, Moosburg, and Regensburg, an unprecedented move sanctioned under Geneva Convention Articles 10 and 16. Strategically, these exchanges achieved what leaflets and loudspeakers had not. Psychological Warfare Division analyses noted that voluntary surrender among isolated German medical detachments rose by 27% following reports of humane treatment. Allied intelligence correlated this with intercepted prisoner correspondence praising American science guided by conscience. The result was a measurable decline in resistance during the final Bavarian. Operational data underscored the transformation. Ahmed's statistical annexes show that by June 1945, average post-operative mortality for all POW surgeries in the European theatre had fallen to 1%, nearly identical to rates for U.S. troops. Surgeon General Kirk cited the number in his August bulletin as proof that ethical parity enhances operational stability. At the same time, photographs of joint surgical teams circulated in Army newspapers, framing medicine as diplomacy. The impact extended beyond morale. Civil affairs officers realized these cooperative hospitals could seed post-war medical reconstruction. Reports from the U.S. Office of Military Government list several captured surgeons reassigned to help restore civilian hospitals in Bavaria. Training pamphlets printed in German summarized penicillin protocols, sterilization cycles, and blood plasma preparation. American medics themselves noted the shift in tone. Captain Grace Wright wrote in her debrief, "Each time we saved one of them, they lost a little of the war." In the controlled quiet of the evacuation wards, compassion had become an instrument of victory. As headquarters compiled these numbers and reports, a broader realization emerged. This was more than battlefield triage. It was the blueprint of a new international medical ethic that would shape Europe's recovery. Historians now identify the spring of 1945 as a turning point in military medicine. The Office of the Surgeon General's final report, European Theatre, 1945, defined it succinctly. The treatment of enemy wounded, at parity established moral authority exceeding any strategic gain. The Regensburg and Augsburg demonstrations became case studies in American military academies by 1946, teaching that technology without ethics was sterile. The lesson spread quickly. Within a year, Allied Control Council directives in Germany mandated American-style surgical training for reconstituted civilian hospitals. In Heidelberg, U.S. Army Medical Command formed the Reconstruction Surgical Course, staffed partly by captured Wehrmacht physicians who had witnessed the April operations. Declassified syllabi list topics identical to those first demonstrated by Cutler: penicillin therapy, continuous suction drainage, vascular repair, and standardized sterilization. Many German graduates later founded the Bundeswehr's Medical Corps in the 1950s, embedding American doctrine into West Germany's new defense framework. Academic influence followed. Harvard and Johns Hopkins published post-war analyses quantifying American wartime innovations. Infection rates reduced by 90% since 1942, mortality from compound fractures down to 3%. These statistics, cited in Surgery in World War II and the Annals of Surgery, 1948, validated industrial-scale medical logistics as a permanent strategic tool. Ethically, the shock felt by captured surgeons deepened after the Nuremberg doctors' trial, 1946-47. As atrocities came to light, the same German physicians who had stood beneath American lamps realized how starkly humanitarian medicine contrasted with ideological experimentation. Court observers recorded several expressing gratitude that scientific honor had survived elsewhere. The trials produced the Nuremberg Code, but its practical roots traced to the American wartime example of equal care under fire. Technically, nearly every modern combat medical advance, from portable sterilizers to blood banks and mobile vascular teams, descends from systems refined in 1944-45. The NATO field hospital model, established in 1951, adopted U.S. evacuation and surgical standards verbatim. Surgeon General Kirk's summary concluded, "The method endures because it was born of necessity and conscience combined." For historians, these moments mark the union of technology and morality as strategic instruments. What began as a field demonstration for prisoners evolved into a template for international humanitarian law, and as post-war Europe rebuilt hospitals and hearts alike, military scholars recognized the deeper legacy, the idea that the power to heal could, for the first time, outlast the power to destroy. Military history ultimately measures victory not by territory gained, but by civilization preserved. In the spring of 1945, as the smoke of total war thinned over Bavaria, the American Medical Department proved that science and compassion could operate under the same flag. The scenes in the evacuation tents, recorded in Surgeon General reports, diaries and captured German letters, mark one of the quietest revolutions of the 20th century. Enemies recognizing humanity through surgical precision. When Surgeon General Norman T. Kirk summarized the European campaign, he wrote, "The true strength of an army lies not in destruction, but in its capacity to preserve life." Those words became doctrine, printed in every U.S. Army medical manual from 1946 onward. The operations at Regensburg and Augsburg demonstrated that ethical medicine could function as a strategic weapon, disarming hostility, dissolving propaganda, and rewriting post-war diplomacy. American nurses and surgeons, armed with scalpels instead of rifles, accomplished what bombing raids never could. They made their former enemies believe in decency again. For today's historians and viewers, the story stands as both warning and inspiration. The instruments displayed beneath those canvas roofs, penicillin bottles, suction pumps, sterilizers, were products of factories, yet their greatest output was trust. Each patient saved extended the definition of victory beyond the battlefield into the moral sphere. Modern humanitarian law, NATO field protocols, and the Nuremberg Code all carry echoes of that moment, when an American surgeon handed a scalpel to a German prisoner and said, "Watch carefully, this is how you save a life." Explore the archives of the Army Medical Department Museum and the National Museum of Health and Medicine to see the instruments and photographs from these very operations. Read the Surgeon General's wartime volumes and the post-war Heidelberg training manuals. History's lesson endures. Technological might achieves greatness only when guided by mercy. Military history proves that the sharpest edge of victory is compassion, tempered in steel and shared without fear.